Hello.
Hello. Patrick, you're still on mute.
Hello?
Yeah, you're connected now.
Oh, okay.
Right. Great.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you again, Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah,
Nice to be
been a very
here.
nice conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'd like to welcome you to our Green Innovation Talks with me, Mr. Banks. So the Green Innovation Talk is it's a flagship program from the Nigerian Climate Innovation Center to be able to share innovation, thoughts, ideas, with innovators from Nigeria or in Nigeria around how we can further scale the emerging Nigerian, green economy. As you know that, the green economy, in other countries have been pushing a far stronger agenda on how to create an alternative economy, for the benefits and also for, for other business opportunities. And so for us to be able to scale this economy for us, we think that it is also important to be able to listen from those who are actively playing in that space. And so that's why we have you today. So to our listeners out there, I'd like to say thank you, for joining us. And I'll give a brief introduction about our guest, which again, Patrick, you helped me introduce yourself a lot further. So our guest today is Mr. Patrick Ogunnowo, and he is the founder and CEO of Africa UK Trade Investment Enterprise, and also the author of the Green Millionaire, Monetizing Green Strategies in Emerging Markets. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Great. So our conversation today is around food waste, biofuel, and also all the different, possibilities or opportunities available in that space. But before we go further, I would like you to share a little bit more about yourself, and then that book, The Green Millionaire. It sounds very interesting. What do we need to know about it?
Yeah, a little bit about myself. Good morning, everyone listening. My name is Patrick Ogunnowo. I've been in the green space for quite a long time, as far back as late 90s. I've been doing community-based projects to help people understand how they can start a green business. So it could be encouraging people not to waste their food, but to use it to make compost. We get this compost and they use it in their allotments where they grow vegetables to enrich the soil. But fast tracking, because we still have time to talk about my projects and what I've done in Nigeria, in the UK. What I'm doing now is business focused. It's moving away from the theory of the past and moving into the practicality of having a business and growing that business, scaling up in the green sector. And we're taking that forward with Africa UK Trade and Investment Enterprise. Green Millionaire.
Tell me about it.
Everyone wants to do good. I love to do good.
Everybody wants to do good. Everyone wants to be a green millionaire.
Good for the environment. But at the same time, you can operate in that space and still smile when you look at the bottom line. Well, we all know that the world is slowly moving away from fossil fuels. We all know that the traditional source of energy is considered harmful to the environment because of the amount of carbon dioxide produced when fossils are burned. People are looking for alternative sources to rely on when it comes to generating power. I know this, I saw this, I tapped into this, and that book is basically showing people how to set up businesses in the green space to make money, as well as contribute towards saving the environment as well.
Okay, so great. So if we do that contribution, many times people have tried to make me understand that, oh, how do you solve the world's problem and still be profitable? But I think that along that line, we've come to see that there is a deep inherent profitability in saving the world's problem. Now, it's no more about, development organization or not-for-profits and all that. It's now a mainstream economy. So from your book, can you share about 3 excerpts, I mean, maybe 2 or 3 excerpts around what do you think a green entrepreneur, right? Possibly maybe from the biofuel sector or, the food, the food compost, sector and co. What do you think they should look out for if you're going to identify 3 things that a possible green millionaire should look out for?
Well, the first thing I would say is opportunity.
All right.
Opportunity is everywhere. And I would love to always say that even operating in the green space, if you are operating as a business, you will run it as a business. Let's put this in perspective. 129,000 hectares of agricultural land is used for bioenergy crops in the US. I've just completed a kind of deal with a client in Nigeria. He was given 5,000 hectares of land in Kogi State for agricultural use to produce biodiesel. In the UK, we are producing in the region, not as much as the US. The US produced like 16 billion gallons of ethanol. We are producing 1/3 of that in the UK. What I'm trying to say here is opportunity. That sector, there's tremendous opportunity available. Anyone looking to operate in this space, look at the opportunity, look at what we have in that space and tap into it.
Okay, so you mentioned opportunities, and also you mentioned pure business, right? I mean, we know that at the back of our mind, we really want to have an alternative, energy source, right, or fuel source. So you've mentioned that even though you are trying to save the world, you need to operate as a pure business. So now, what else will you add to those 2 points?
Well, firstly, I should have said mentality as well, because it's key. It is key. Mentality in the line of the way people are thinking. It's not just purely for economic reasons. So I need to backtrack a bit. Yes, I'm a businessman now, but when we started out, it was purely passion. So I would link passion with mentality before I go the way of business. Well, anyway, mentality and passion. We know that, as I've said, people are looking for alternatives. There's always opportunities where people look for alternatives. People have passion to make sure the environment is in a good state, to make sure that we move away from pollution, to make sure that they use their energy to help in one way or the other to make our space better. So this kind of mentality I'm talking about is the way people think, the way people are concerned about having this mindset that the environment is mine as well. The environment is not just for the government to look after, but it is where we live. We need to keep it clean. We need to look for ways and play our own part in ensuring that the environment is a safe place. Now, that's the kind of mentality we're talking about, coupled with passion, that will lead to somebody now thinking, what can I do to make a difference?
Okay. All right. So, I mean, linking mentality, right? Passion. Nigeria is known to be a very, maybe I should use that word green, right? Apart from the fact that our colors are green, everybody loves to have, there's a lot of greenery around. But then agriculture is actually a very strong part of Nigeria, which is equally doubling up in effort, and in possibilities. So I know that mentioning the biofuel crops, the bioenergy crops that you said, I'm very aware that cassava is one of the, most used crops when it comes to biofuel, and Nigeria ranks about number one, about the first, the highest producers of cassava in the world. I mean, I stumbled upon this very, lovely, thesis of research done by Bello Kafayat, about bioenergy in Nigeria. And what Kafayat was able to help us point out is there are different, types of, outcomes of biodiesel. But what also caught my attention was the energy crops, the bioenergy crops. Now, that mentality that you've mentioned now. So how would you say that Nigerians should view bioenergy crops from a different light, from just consumption, but purely, business to business, to be able to fuel as a means of resource to another economy? What would be your take on this?
Well, my take is, after fully understanding the advantages and disadvantages, because there are disadvantages, but let's start with the disadvantages first. When you're using crops to produce bioenergy, we have to realize that crops or food is meant to be consumed. So the more agricultural land we use, the less it is for consumables. Mm-hmm. But fully knowing that agricultural land can be used for bioenergy crops. Mm-hmm. And I have to quickly chip in, because you mentioned cassava. It's not only cassava.
Yes, there's quite a number of it.
Yes, it depends on the produce. So let's say, for example, somebody that grows corn to use for bioenergy, or even cassava, we are looking in the region of ethanol. But there are other things we can use. Even wheat can be used. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not only that. Waste oil can be used as input as well. So it depends on the feedstock, which is the input. Now, if we are getting ethanol, or we are getting biodiesel as the end product, but let's now address the fact that we are talking about using consumable produce as sources of input for bioenergy. So these are the ones we call bioenergy crops. Bankole, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here with you live. I'm even sharing the screen of the of the research I found by Bello Kafayat, stating about 10 energy crops, from sesame to palm oil to groundnut, and quite a number. But then I'm still listening to you. Please go ahead.
Okay. So moving on, we could see that there's a huge potential. There's a huge opportunity in Nigeria, even as a country, because the world is moving towards bioenergy. And one thing I discovered is that, initially we were talking about the issue we have with petrochemicals, for example. We are looking for cleaner alternatives. Mm-hmm. And what we have found is biofuel. Yeah. So we have found biofuel, which is what we're talking about now. But I need to quickly say, biofuel is the fuel that is sourced from biomass. So it could be biomass, it could be waste from animals, it could be materials from plants. Mm-hmm. But it has been proven over time, especially from the research you said, you must have mentioned it as well, that all this we're talking about, it has proven to be a good substitute for fossil fuel. We're talking about biofuel now. Because its sources can be restocked. It can be restocked. The sources is renewable.
Renewable, yes. It can always be restocked.
Yes, unlike coal, petroleum, and natural gas. So that's the angle we are coming from. But we should not run above ourselves in the instance that industry, the petroleum industry, they've had an advantage of 80
to
years.
100. Over 100 years, mind you.
Over 100 years ahead.
Over 100
and
years.
They have built a tremendous facility. But it's not about competition here
anymore. Yeah.
Businesses at times, it's not all about competition. There are times it's time for collaboration. And that's the way we're looking at it.
So I mean, I remember if I can just quickly chip in. I remember I also stumbled on another document by the NNPC in Nigeria, right? Trying to scale the growth of, trying to scale the possibility of biofuel in Nigeria. I mean, there were a few thoughts around it and a few possible angle on how they intend to scale the bioenergy or biofuel, sector in Nigeria. But then if you have a chance to be able to scale that and you have a chance to tell NNPC something, what would you say?
If I have a chance to do what? Sorry, Bankole, can you repeat that?
So I mean that, with the work that NNPC is trying to do to scale as a government entity, pseudo-government, pseudo-business, and also in charge of fuel energy in Nigeria, they came up with a few pointers on how they intend to scale the bioenergy, the biofuel sector in Nigeria, right? But if I ask you as a consultant, right, what would be your area of focus for an entity like NNPC that would like to scale biofuel in Nigeria? What would you say?
What I would say firstly is anything that needs to be started has to be started well. So from the perspective of a management consultant, the advice I will have is this: get the right advice. Get the right advice. Because there's always a need to have a good plan in place. I'm going to quickly tie that with policy as well, because you mentioned NNPC and their role.
Yeah.
It is always good to understand the policy that drives that kind of economy. Always good. I think I had, I'm digressing a bit, but I'll quickly come back to it. I had a conversation with the Department of International Trade in the UK.
Yeah.
When we started out Africa UK Trade and Investment Enterprise. And they told me about how they are really keen, they want to do business with African countries. Oh, these are the supports we are going to have. They are telling me big things. But they were taken back by the question I asked them. I said, can I have a look at the policy, the UK policy, in relation to doing business with African countries, please? And they were like, oh. I said, oh. Can I not have it? They said, yeah, you can have it, but you never got this kind of question before.
Oh.
Now, to come back to what I was saying, basically, it's good to understand what the policy is. Now, an organization like NNPC, it would be an opportunity to have a sit down with them and tell them, yes, how can we scale up in this kind of sector? We understand they have the policy is in the right place. It's as if we are working alongside the policy. Then they want to set up, they want to scale up. They should do something that you, Bankole, you are doing already. And what is that? Talking. The people, you have to engage the people. People have to understand, because this is not just a standalone by an agency of the government. It is driven and it expands in scaling up by the people. When people understand that, they start doing small scale businesses. Some are into composting, food waste. They are gathering it, separating it in their kitchen, using it for compost. Composting, because Nigeria itself, they are aware. There was, in 2013, I came to Nigeria to see Professor, he was an ex-VC of UI. He was married to Chief Obafemi Awolowo's daughter, Professor. Okay, the name will come back. Now, I came down to see him, and I discovered that after retiring from being the VC, he started a waste to composting enterprise, an NGO. And they had these big projects in Alex Lawyer Market. They collect waste. They use something similar to what we're using here.
Yes, I'm listening.
Called rockets. We call it rockets. But rockets is meant to enhance the rate at which composting takes place. So they're using rockets in Alex Lawyer Market. They gather the waste at source and they compost it. But it was not in a commercial quantity. But with rockets that we have here, it turns around easily. You know, natural composting takes time. But with the rockets, you have good compost within a fortnight, 14 days. And it depends on the size of the equipment. One can tend towards having it in commercial quantity. We sell it here, we bag it, and it's commercialized. So going back to NMPC, that kind of opportunity is just to advise them as a marketing consultant. Is as if they are creating a market by having talk with the people. Like Green Innovation Talk now is sensitizing the people, is engaging the people, is informing the people. There's a room for that. There's a need for that. It let people embrace what you want to get out there, the kind of information. It helps people understand where you're coming from, and the mentality start to change. And these would be the kind of drivers of the policy.
Okay. All right. So
we now look at the business.
Yes. No, go ahead, please. I'm listening.
Yeah. So now we look at the business plan. We now start to address what kind of business model are we looking at. Oh, how do we engage our suppliers to make sure we have the right supply line? How do we get all the input? Is it the wheat we're using? Is it the cassava? Does it get to the plant? What's the process like? We talked about the process, how to move from, okay, maybe all these inputs, we have it in the plant. It's like not the rocket now. We are talking of like a reactor that is, we put all these inputs in there. Is it cassava we're using? Under tremendous heat, under tremendous temperature and pressure, then we come out with the output, which could be the biodiesel, for example. Then we have to talk of the customer. This is the kind of process, this is kind of model, and this is how we can build a business as well.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Patrick. But again, do you mind if I also ask you, right, if we are going to set up a biofuel company?
Yes.
Can you kind of sort of explain what kind of technology runs at the back? I know I shared a screen about all the possibilities of the different types of outcomes of a biofuel, you know, of that biofuel sector, from methane to ethanol to, you know, to hydrogen, name it. But just to help the people who are listening and who are also watching, right, that how, if we're going to set up a basic biofuel, you know, center or a business, what should we look at?
Well, as a business, if you're setting up that, we have to look at the different companies, for example, that produces these reactors. The reason why I said that is there is a lot of advancement in different countries. There's stages of production of biofuel. There's first generation is what we've been talking about. We have up to the fourth generation. So with the first generation, people that want to engage in a business like this, we're talking of ethanol, we're talking of biodiesel. Now we can use a simple reactor plant. Different companies are building these reactors. The key thing that one has to look for is an increased octane value that helps in combustion of all the products we are talking about. So is a businessman should have a conversation, an engagement with the different companies that are producing these reactors, even as basic, even as simple ones, because from the perspective of a businessman, he has to think about how many, what's the volume, or what's the liter, or what's the gallon I want to produce. He knows his market. I'm selling to X amount of people, so I need to be producing over a year X amount of liters. Then he has to identify the right equipment. Now, that's why I said he needs to talk to the producers. Now, if he has identified somebody in the UK, There's loads of manufacturers out there. It could be US, it could be UK, it could be anyone. Identifying them, knowing the right equipment, setting up his business plan. He has a market, let's say in Nigeria. He knows who his customers are. And I've talked about using a model called SIPOC when I started with the suppliers and I ended with the customers. So he has to use that kind of model to kind of understand the business terrain. How can he set up in a country like Nigeria, for example? So there's a lot of things that a businessman has to consider. And that's why I'm here as a business consultant. Maybe what he needs to is to engage Patrick as well, so that I can be able to advise him. As much as I want to give so much information to our listeners, well, yes, if somebody like me is here to advise a business that wants to operate in the economic in the green space.
Okay, great. I can see that. I mean, this is sort of like a marketing business strategy for you. But then, if you're going to tease us a bit, right? If you tease us a bit, what should an initial mapping look like?
What is? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
So I said, if you're going to tease us a bit, right? What will be if you're going to carry out an initial feasibility study? What should be your direction? What should you be trying to look at? I mean, before we come to the market size of biofuel in Nigeria or even in Africa, but if you're going to tease us a bit as a management consultant, right? What would you say that you can share at this early stage that, look, you want to carry out this? What should you be looking at?
Well, I would say what we should be looking at is an initial feasibility study. Initial feasibility study in the sense that we have to understand from the perspective of a businessman why he wants to go into this kind of business. And is there enough room or a market space for him? Now, looking at that, when I say initial feasibility studies, it's not really a major one. It's like, initially we said, it depends on how businesses want to engage, because there are different levels that a businessman or an entrepreneur can engage. Let's take it from one. An entrepreneur might decide, I want to have agricultural land. Yes, agricultural land, but it wants to grow bioenergy crops. Now it starts from there. Let's say, for example, like the man I'm working with, that was to get 5,000 hectares of land in Kogi State. He knew that he needed land. He wants to engage from that side. It's not that, but not everyone has to do that. An entrepreneur can decide, I'm not planting. I can get a supplier that is already planting with, and he can supply me. Do you see the difference for two people now?
Okay.
One wants to engage by saying, I am going to produce all the crops, energy crops I need. Another one is saying, I'm not starting with the planting side of it. I will engage with someone that already has what I need. Another lady I was talking with yesterday, it's a big farm in Nigeria, in another state. And their plan is to have 20,000 hectares of land they are growing with. But right now, they were able to cultivate 5,000 hectares, and they're looking for investment to be able to scale up. Such a person, businessman B, should engage with such a person that's already producing wheat, because he knows that he can use wheat to produce his ethanol. So at that stage, it's about building the right relationship with stakeholders in that kind of sector. Why? Because you already have what you need as a starting material to get your produce.
Okay, so just to push on a little bit further, right? Can you help us explain how the size of how this market looks like, right? In Nigeria or in Africa, how do you think the size of that market is? I mean, if a country like US is trying to triple, their production of, of biodiesel, biofuel, right? like you rightly say, they're generating this, but then by 2023 or 2021, they hope to have tripled that to about 36 billion gallons. The same thing with some EU countries. How would you say the size of market of biofuel in Nigeria? How would you say it looks like?
Well, biofuel, it's a growing market. Let's start from there. And like you rightly said, all the figures you gave me were right. Because initially, before I go to the Nigerian market, over $17.5 billion is generated in the US as of 2017, because they produce 16 billion gallons. Now, what are we trying to put in perspective? Biofuel, like we rightly said, people are looking for alternatives, be it Nigeria or any other African countries, all over the world. There is an opportunity we have identified. So in a country like Nigeria, it is a growing market. And the reason why I can boldly say that it's a growing market is this. Even we starting out here in the UK, we already have 4 clients. In Nigeria, the man I said got 5,000 hectares in Kogi State. The woman that is growing with scaling up to 20,000 hectares of agricultural land. So people already, that's why businessmen are different. Entrepreneurs, they are different set of people. The passion there, they see that there's an opportunity and they're already tapping into it in the background. There are lots of other people in Nigeria already. So it's not a new thing in Nigeria. That's what I want to say. People are already engaging us as management consultants. Say, hey, Patrick, we are paying you X amount of money. Come advise us on how we can set up. So to go back to the question, it's a growing business.
It's a growing business, right? But we know that there's a gap when it comes to data availability of the size of this market. But if you're going to estimate the size of this market in Nigeria or possibly in West Africa, or even in Africa, according to what is convenient or accessible to you, what will you estimate the size of this market to be in Nigeria?
I would say in the next 10 years, for Nigeria to be at par with other economies, they need to be producing at least 10 million gallons per year as a start. Now, we should remember that biofuel is not just coming up to take the place of petrol.
Yes.
Already they can work together, because most of this biofuel, they are used as additives to petrol, to diesel, so that they can be more combustible and more efficient. So already that is a market on its own. Some biofuels can be used in diesel cars already. Yes, there needs to be of higher grade and be purified. That's another sector already.
Entirely.
So there are different ways that this biofuel can be used. So it's not that we are waiting for petrol to dry up. It's the right time in Nigeria. Why is it the right time in Nigeria? Look at what is happening. Coronavirus. We are all home. Yeah. We're sitting at home now with our family, which is a great thing. But do you know that the impact of this coronavirus all over the world has affected oil production? Oil production, not the production per se, but the price of oil. It's gone down. It's as if it's no longer sustainable. Yes, we've always been saying it that it's not sustainable, but right now they are running at a loss. So much oil, but no one to buy it. It's like water everywhere, not a drop to drink.
not a drop to drink. So I mean, let's take a few questions from some of our guests. There was a question from David Cromwell. David Cromwell was asking, about how, with the whole issue of, poverty and hunger, what is it of best use instead of to feed the people? You know, what would you advise in that light? I mean, how would you respond to David?
Sorry, that cut out. The question cut out at the end. Sorry, can you repeat it, Bankole?
So David would like to know, right? David Cromwell. I'm not sure where he's calling from, but maybe he's from the UK. So David is asking, right, that is it of best, strategy, right, to use looking at the state of hunger and poverty in sub-Saharan Africa or even in a country like Nigeria, is it of best best strategy to use our land for biofuel cropping instead of feeding the nation?
That's a very good question. And that's one of the issues that always been rearing up its head in this kind of sector. Mm-hmm. Is it of best? From the perspective of a businessman, from the perspective of an humanitarian. Now, the way we answer this is this. Even agricultural land that we're talking about to grow crops, the amount of waste, of food waste all over the world,
yes,
it is pathetic.
It's ridiculous.
It is pathetic.
It's ridiculous.
Because his question, I don't want to preempt him. We know that agricultural land should be used for consumable crops, like I rightly said in the beginning. And we have alternatives in the green sector. When this food that is grown using this agricultural land, when it's wasted, we can use that waste to generate biofuel. Yes? So it is not only agricultural land or bioenergy crops that we can use to get our end produce, which is the biofuel. It is not only that. We can actually use food waste to generate the biofuel. Having said that, I will now address his question. The reason why I mentioned that is the amount of land needed to generate bioenergy or biofuel is not as much as some NGOs or humanitarian people that are concerned about this, like the question he rightly asked, is not as much land that we need because there are alternative ways of getting this biofuel. Now, the land that we need, that means there's land management. It is about management. Anything that one has is a resource. Any resource that is not well managed is not good management. So access to agricultural land, it is not the whole agricultural land we need. It's just a small percentage, and the process will be well managed. And that is why I talked about policy. What's the policy of each country? How is the outlook in using a certain space or land to generate biofuel? These crops are specifically grown, not for consumption, but for production of biofuel. I wouldn't know if I've been able to answer his question, but if there's any follow-up question on that, because I wouldn't want to just say, oh no, it's not good to use the land. That's really very bad because everybody's hungry in Africa. Not everybody's hungry in Africa. It is about managing your resource well to be able to come out with the right outcomes. Hello, Bankole, are you still there? Hello?
I'm so sorry about that. I think the network, we had a break of network. So, okay, so let's just continue from where it stopped. Let me just pick one other question from here. Akeem Olopade, I believe you have not answered that yet. is asking a question that how can clients assess pre-feasibility studies or feasibility study grant funding from the UK DTI or through some of your sources to fund some of the projects in the waste to energy and agricultural crops to energy space?
Yes. The Department of International Trade, DIT, is an arm of the UK that supports trade and investments across countries. Trade and investment from the perspective of the UK. I work in partnership with the Department of International Trade as a UK business, and that's why we are set up as Africa-UK Trade and Investment Enterprise. How can businesses or entrepreneurs access investment funds? Through set up from the Department of International Trade. A business that is set up, and that's a good question. Thank you very much, Shegun, for that. A business that is set up, or an entrepreneur that wants to go into that space, it's always good to have a good feasibility studies. So let's say, Bankole, are you still there?
No, it's trying to reconnect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should I keep talking?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Just are you done with the question, sir? Are you done with answering the question?
No, I haven't. So if we're not talking about businesses that want to access this funding, a good feasibility study report is always good. We call it an investment-ready feasibility report, an investment-ready feasibility report. This report has to be qualitative, and we'll try to work with renowned partners in the caliber of KPMG and PwC. KPMG and PwC, we pay them to give us a very good feasibility study report. So is this report and the initial report done by, my organization, Africa UK Trade and Investment Enterprise, that is part of the documentation that is needed to now have a sit-down interview with the Department of International Trade within the UK Embassy in Nigeria. Now, these funds we are talking about, from the policy of the UK is trying to do more business with Nigeria. The UK is trying to do more business with African countries. And the amount of funds that the UK has set aside is in the region of 200 billion pounds. 200 billion pounds is set aside by the UK government to encourage trade and investment in Africa. Nigeria as a country have access to this. And I've explained how this could be put together for serious businesses and entrepreneurs to have an interview with the Department of International Trade in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so there's a question here by by Ayotunde Williams.
I am back. I'm sorry for that little glitch.
Okay.
My internet just went. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. Anyway, Tito, can you ask the next question so that I can pick it up from there?
All right. So now there's a question here from Ayotunde Williams. So he started by voicing out some concerns. He said there is a doubt that the current arrangements around food waste and solid waste generally lead to change from the present non-segregation and to collect to dump in dump sites, which dominate the landscape. Now, opportunities are being lost to transform the waste to valuable products and enhance public health and environmental well-being. So now this is the question. One of the first questions the person is asking after voicing his concern is, why has the system persisted in these approaches, that's co-mingling and open dumping, that are so unsustainable, co-mingling and collecting to dump? I'm not sure if you get the question.
Well, I think I get the drift. See, separation at source is really a very good way to first go about it. Separation at source. So let's say food waste is being collected separately. We do that a lot in the UK, separate at source. Now, and the reason why we're doing this is to decrease the flow of waste into landfills. Now, from the question he asked, there's a model whereby landfills could be used to generate compost. But this is totally different because here has to be passed from underneath to aerate the whole pile. But that is specifically set up to generate compost. Now, he was talking about most likely the major gas we have in dump site is methane gas. Methane gas itself can be used as a way when we are trying to get biofuel. So basically, whatever country is calling from, it depends on what the government is saying as a way of policy on how to tap into, we can call these resources, because they could be used, they look like waste, but they could be used as a starting material to get a usable product. And this is all covered in my books. How we can use waste to create a product that is marketable. So depending on the country it's calling from, a lot of countries are really engaging. Look at the UK. Even businesses are going in the line of ensuring that they don't send their waste into dump sites again. In Scotland, we have the branch of Sainsbury's, a supermarket. They generate a lot of waste, but in the whole of their stores in Scotland, they are not sent into the landfills again. They're just sent directly to the plant to be used as a starting material to get biofuel. So I do sympathize with his thinking, I do sympathize with his situation, but that is why we have covered in this talk that people need to be informed. The government needs to play their part. And that is how we can get away from the kind of dump piles, unsightly sites, pollution, polluting the groundwater and all this. There used to be like a dump site in Ojota back in the days, if anyone remembers it. Everyone will understand what pollution is at that time. But now, I went there in 2013, it's cleared, it's no longer there. So this is the kind of thing, I think the waste management agency in Lagos is doing really a lot of work. They have dedicated sites that they have to manage waste as well.
Okay, the second question here is, okay, innovation exists, no doubt, but why, okay, let me just skip that. All right, how can these innovations be supported to become mainstream and trigger transition to sustainability? Okay, let me go over it again. How can these innovations, I'm talking about this, our discussion now, the discussion we've been having so far, how can they be supported to become mainstream and trigger transitions to sustainability? I think this person wants to go into waste management and all, so he's just trying to get to know what.
Okay, wherever that person is calling from, we still always have to go back to what is the policy in that country. It helps. Now, for somebody that wants to set up, remember we're talking of different innovations. We are talking of reactors. We are talking of rockets. The rockets generates compost. the reactors could generate biofuel. There is tremendous